Before I start this episode, let me clarify something important. This is not a recommendation to go out and buy any of Apple's products. What follows is simply my documentation and admiration of what I genuinely believe is the biggest moment in computing history in the past decade. It's a story so transformative, so layered, that it reshaped an entire industry. So get comfortable, grab some popcorn, and prepare to either be entertained or perhaps even learn something new. Let's be honest, a lot of people hate Apple these days, and not without reason. They've made their products increasingly difficult to repair, inflated the prices of accessories to almost insulting levels, and love to keep everything under strict proprietary control. But what if, just what if, Apple actually did something revolutionary, something that pushed the entire industry forward? It turns out they might have done exactly that. For decades, phones and computers were never considered equals in terms of power. They existed in different categories entirely. But if you've been following me for a while, you might remember that back in 2012, I started exploring the possibility. Could a smartphone eventually replace a PC? At the time, the rate at which smartphone power was improving blew my mind. While desktop computers were crawling forward, phones were sprinting. Why? Because they were using a completely different kind of brain, ARM processors, as opposed to the x86 processors that dominated traditional desktops and laptops. ARM chips are based on RISC, reduced instruction set computing, a simpler and more efficient design. x86 chips, typically from Intel, are based on CISC, complex instruction set computing, which means they can do more per instruction. But that comes at the cost of power, heat, and inefficiency. Over the years, phones with ARM chips started getting shockingly close to laptop performance. So the question became, what if you put a supercharged phone chip into a laptop? A chip that's fast, efficient, and doesn't burn through your battery in hours? In November 2020, Apple answered that question with the release of its first Apple Silicon chip, the M1. This wasn't just another chip. It was a turning point. A mobile-class processor that, when placed in a MacBook, rivaled, and in many cases outperformed, desktop CPUs from Intel. I remember getting my hands on one of those first M1 MacBooks. I used it for over 10 hours across 4 days and still had 17% battery left. That's unheard of. Apps like Chrome and Lightroom didn't just run, they flew. Everything was smooth, responsive. It didn't feel like a laptop, it felt like magic. Even more shocking? This was the base model. No fan, just pure, raw efficiency. To understand how we got here, we need to go back, all the way to 2005. That year, Apple was still using PowerPC chips in their computers, a simpler RISC-based design made in collaboration with IBM and Motorola. But those chips started falling behind, so Apple turned to Intel, switching to x86 for better performance. But then something strange happened. Apple approached Intel with a proposal. Could Intel build chips for a new mobile device Apple was working on? Intel's CEO, Paul Otellini, declined. He didn't think the iPhone would sell well, and he didn't want to spend the R&D budget on a low-margin mobile chip. That decision is now considered one of the biggest mistakes in tech history. Apple moved forward without them, designing their own ARM chips and acquiring PA Semi, a company with deep expertise in custom silicon design. This was the first step on a path that would take over a decade to walk, but it led straight to the M1. By 2013, Apple was already years ahead of the competition. Their A7 chip in the iPhone 5S shocked the world. It was the first 64-bit smartphone processor, beating even ARM's own roadmap. And Apple didn't stop. Year after year, they invested billions into R&D, tweaking, refining, and optimizing their chips. By 2018, their A12 chip was catching up with Intel's desktop offerings. And by 2020, the A14 was outperforming Intel's best desktop CPUs in many tasks, all while using just 5 watts of power. That's 1/20th the energy consumption. On a phone. So when Apple announced it was ditching Intel to make its own laptop chips, it wasn't a risky move. It was a logical next step. Clay Christensen, the Harvard professor who coined the term disruptive innovation, once said that true disruption doesn't come from new technologies, but from novel combinations of existing technologies that deliver better value to consumers. That's exactly what happened here. Apple didn't invent ARM, but they perfected it. They put it into a laptop, and they proved that a mobile-class chip could outperform traditional CPUs, with better battery life, less heat, and cheaper prices. It's like the iPhone moment all over again, but for laptops. This isn't just a win for Apple. It's a massive wake-up call for the entire computing industry. AMD and Intel are now racing to catch up. Qualcomm, Samsung, and Google are all investing heavily in ARM laptop chips, and Microsoft is re-architecting Windows to run better on ARM. Even the fastest supercomputer in the world, Japan's Fugaku, runs on ARM architecture. This isn't a trend, it's a transformation. Now, sure, Apple's M1, and the lineup that followed, comes with its share of compromises. You can't upgrade the RAM after purchase, there's no support for external GPUs, and Apple's upgrade pricing can be, let's just say, not friendly to your wallet. These limitations are real, and they matter, especially for power users who want modularity and flexibility. What's even more exciting is the ripple effect this has created. Apple didn't just build a great chip for its own machines. It raised the bar for the entire industry. Now, everyone else is playing catch-up. And that's great news for all of us. Whether you're a MacBook loyalist, a Windows power user, or someone rocking a Chromebook, you should be excited about this moment. Because this kind of leap forward in performance per watt and battery efficiency benefits everyone. Apple didn't just change the game, they designed an entirely new one. And if this is what the future of computing looks like, then count me in. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious.